So for us, in order to pass from our loans this is add loan showing value to our add loan view, we could just create a variable here and pass it here through binding. But since we have our nice model, what we are going to do is declare that variable here instead. So we say var is add loan showing, and this is going to be a binding pool. All right, and now in order for us, when we are moving from our loan and presenting our add loan view, to present that, to pass that value, now you see it's already complaining that this thing has no initializer and you have a variable here set. So what we want to do is to create an initializer for our add loan view. So we say init, and it's going to take is, let me just copy paste this, which is a type of binding pool. All right, and once we initialize it, we are going to say self is equals to, and whatever we are passing here. So we basically pass a value and then set this variable name, variable value to this here. Let's Command P. So our error from here goes away, but there is another error, and this is in our add loan, because here we are initializing our add loan view model, and it says, listen, now you need to pass another variable here because we require this in our initializer. But right now we don't know what is this variable here, so we cannot pass it to our variable, to our initializer. Who knows what the value is? This variable is the loans view, because the variable is held here, and when we are initializing add loan view, we have access to that variable. So this is a very good way of passing that value from here to a new view. So here is the difference. Remember when I was telling you about a state object and observed object. So in order to initialize our view model outside and then pass it here, we are going to convert this to observed object. And we don't need this equal anymore. We're just going to say that this is going to be a type of add. Let's cut this actually from here because we are going to need that. Say add loan view model. So that's it. We are going to say that there will be an observed object called view model, and its type of add loan view model. Command P. Here, of course, it will complain like the preview doesn't know what to do. I'm actually going to get rid of the preview because all our UI setup is done. There is no need for our preview to be used anymore, because it just creates extra headache, and I really hate these previews. They don't really work properly. So yeah, what we're going to do now, we need to pass this view model, and when we are going to pass that is, now it's complaining here that says missing an argument. We need to have a view model. So let's ask our Xcode to help us. Click on fix, and it says please pass a parameter add loan view model. And now here we can paste our code, and we are initializing our add view model, add loan view model here, and then we are passing to our view here. So this view model is initialized in our loans view when we are creating our add loan view. That's why now it's observed object instead of state object. And when we initialize it, we can pass this binding value, which is $, and it is add loan showing. All right. So if we go to our add loan view, and then we go to our button here, and our button obviously has access to our view model, and I will say like view model dot is add loan showing. And because we are accessing a binding pool here, we cannot just say that this is equals to false, because it will give us an error. Instead, we are going to access, you see that we cannot set the value as it is. One is we are setting at pool, and this is binding pool. We're going to access the wrapped value of it, and this time we can set this to false. I'm going to copy that and put it in my done button as well, because when our user clicks on done in order to create an item, we also want to dismiss the view. Let's just quickly run to see if this is actually working. So let's go to our add item. Now our done button is active also. We are not disabling it. And as you can see, when I click, both buttons are disabling our view. So it means that our binding is passed properly from our loan view to our add loan view through our add loan model, which we initialize and pass it to our view here. Everything is nice and is working. So now let's focus on disabling this done button if our form is empty. All right, what we need to do, of course, we are going to write some code, and we don't want to write the code in our view because we want to keep it clean and simple, only our view stuff. Instead, let's go to our model, and we can put the code in our model here. So we need some kind of function that is going to tell us that our user has inputted some data in a name and also in the amount. So and this function will return Boolean. It's true or false. Either two items are completed with some data or they are empty. So let's call a func is valid form, and this is going to return a Boolean. So we need to access to check two things, name and the amount. So if these are not empty, we can return true, otherwise we can return false. So let's say return, and we will say name, is it empty? Or we say amount is empty. So if any of this is empty, we want to return false. Only when both of them are not empty, we want to return true. So let's test that. Let's go to our button here. Where is our button? Our cancel button should be active at all times. And for our done button, which is this part here, we can add a parameter to our button. We just click dot and we say disabled. Disabled. And it takes a Boolean. So if we put true here, for example, it will always be disabled. Or if you put false, it will be always active. But what we want to do is this to be dynamic. So when I type something here, it will change, and when I don't type, it will be removed. So here I'm going to access my view model, and then we just create a function is valid form. So if the form is valid, it will return true, and then disabled will be, actually it will return false, and disabled will be false, otherwise it will be true. So let's try this one. So right now it's disabled. Let's put a name. Still disabled. Let's put an amount, and now it's active. Let's remove the amount, disabled. Let's remove the name. As soon as it's empty, it's disabled. Right, so our button is working now. This is good thing, but our done button is not properly working. And the issue is we don't know how to save something. In our case, our loan. So what we are going to do is, again, go to our view model, because we have to put some functions here and we don't want to put it in our view. And let's create a function. Let's create a function, call it func save loan. And in this function, we want to create a loan. So we want to take all the parameters that our user has inputted in these 4 variables and using that to create a loan object. How we create a loan object? So let new loan equals, and we are going to initialize a loan. Remember, in order to initialize a loan, because it's a core data controlled class, we need to create an instance of this entity. And the entity we can access, we need our context. So we need an NS managed context. Where we can get that from is our persistence. So our persistence, if we access it, it has a container, and the container has this view context. So let's use that. I'm going to say persistence controller dot shared dot container dot view context. Because it's very long, let's try to make it a little bit shorter. If I jump to my persistence container here, what we can do in order to make it a little bit shorter is to add an extra variable here that will give us a little bit short access to our view context. So after our container, let's say var view context, which is context, which is type of NS managed object context, and this is going to return container, which we access here, and then we want to get the view context. So now when I go to my add loan view model, instead I can get rid of these 2 things, and we say view context, which actually goes and access our container and gets back our view context for us. We have initialized our new loan, so let's add our parameters. So we say new loan dot id is equals, and let's create a UU ID on the fly here and get the string value and assign to our new loan. Then we want to add the name, so we say new loan dot name is equals to whatever the name variable is holding. Then we say new loan dot total amount is equals, and since our amount here is a text, because it's a text field that we are accessing, we need to convert the content of that text into a double. So we can say double, and we pass the amount here, which is string. So the double will try to convert the contents of that text into an amount, but this may fail because the user may put, let's say, some kind of characters there or a string there which cannot be converted to double, and we want to make sure that we have a fallback value, which in case if this fails, we want to assign 0. Let's see why it's complaining. Where does it expect a curly brace? Okay, it's gone. It's not. It is. Okay. Moving forward, we have the name, we have total amount. Now let's set the start date, which is equals whatever the start date is, and finally the due date is our due date. So a new item is created. How do we save it? In order to save, let's create a function in our persistent container, which is going to help us to save our items. Because this function we are going to call every time we want to save something, we want to have a ready function for it. So after our initializer here, let's call a write a function save, which will basically, in order to save into core data, we need to say container dot view context. Actually, we can access our view context now directly because we have this handy variable. So say view context dot save, as simple as that. But as you can see, it says that this may throw an error. So how we handle that? We put it into and catch block. So in case if there is an error, we can catch it, and we just say I want to try to save this. And in case if there is an error, let's print that by saying error saving to core data. Let's just pass our error. We need a comma here. Error localized description, and this should be it for our save function. So let's jump to our add loan view model, and again accessing our persistence container dot shared dot save. So we call a save function which will save everything to our core data. All right, it's all nice and easy, but before we call our function, this save loan function, nothing will actually work. So let's go ahead and say before we dismiss here, we are going to say view model dot save loan. Okay, and remember our button is active only when our view is completely filled, our form. That's why before we are saving, we don't really check if this is empty or it has some kind of value, etc., because otherwise our button wouldn't work. This is why our function here is set. So let's try to save our first loan that we actually create and not this automatically created for us. So I'm going to call this, I don't know, my first loan amount. Let's take 1,000. Let's say we took it, I don't know, at the beginning of the year or of the month, and we have to pay at the end of this month. Let's create this. This is my first loan. Due date is June 21st, 30th June 2021, and the amount is 1,000. Very nice. So I'm missing a white there. All right. So we can create a, let's actually delete this one and create a proper one. Okay, so my first loan is now created, and I'm going to delete this test loan, so we have only this loan here. So our next step is to get into this loan by clicking on it and accessing another view, which we can actually look into the ready application, which will be this view here. And this view will have a list of showing all our payments, and also it will show us some information with the progress bar that we are going to create. When every time we add a payment, our paid amount will get filled. And once we complete all this loading bar, it will finally, our loan will be completed. So it shows how much we paid, how much is left. And also we're going to calculate something very interesting here. At least I find it interesting. I don't know if you will be interested in this. So based on our payments, our code will calculate if we continue paying in this way. Let's say we're paying, I don't know, $10 every month. If you continue paying $10 every month, how many days or years or whatever, when will be our expected finishing date? So this will automatically calculate when it's expected to finish repay full your loan if you continue repaying in the same way that you are doing now. So for example, if right now our expected to finish is 2030 for this amount, but if I delete, let's say, this entry, it says now expected to finish in 2043, because I don't know, you have to clone 2 years ago, and until now you have paid only $15,000 from 100,000. So if you continue in this way, you are going to finish it in 2043. And also you can see here that we are actually separating the payments per year, and it says in 2018 you have paid 15,000 in total. So if I add another payment, let's say now 2,000, it will say that in 2021 you have paid 2,000. If I add, I don't know, another 500 now and save, it says in 2021 you have paid 2,500. You can see that the date is getting closer actually when we start paying, and our loading bar is actually filling up as well. Let's, I don't know, I'll add some 50,000 here. You can see how our loading bar is actually almost there. So we have paid 67,500 already. Right, so this is what we're going to build. And yeah, let's start building it in our next lecture.